Welcome to a Mentor's Office podcast. In this episode, we have two great guests, Andy Eyherabide, that is Chief AI Officer at Wizeline, and Santiago Merchan, that is Software Engineer at Wizeline, and me, that I'm a software engineer also working at Wizeline. The idea of this episode is to discuss important news and reports and information related to AI and how can this be relevant to our clients, to employees at Wizeline, and to people interested in artificial intelligence. Welcome, Andy and Santiago. How are you? A pleasure.
Doing great.
Hey,
Thank you for having us.
happy to be here.
Awesome. And I want to start this podcast by talking about one topic that I think it's very relevant. That is, we're going to start talking about models, infrastructure. Afterwards, we're going to go to more business strategy and more relevant and applicable insights that Andy is going to help us with that. And afterwards, we're going to go to something that I really like, that is the long-term vision. So we understand what's the future and what important things could we try to visualize in the future. And I want to start with this blog with one news that I find really interesting. And that one is related to the GPT-4 model. As I was mentioning, models are very important. And one of the things that is very relevant about this model is that for the first time, the GPT model, in this case the 5.4, scored over 72% in the World OS benchmark. And this surpasses what a human expert can do in this benchmark. Normally, or what the scientists have tracked in this benchmark is that a human expert scores 72%. And in this benchmark, and to explain to you a little bit more about how this benchmark works, this is a benchmark created by the University of Carnegie Mellon, the Hong Kong University, and another university in China. And what they do is evaluate the performance of humans and also this kind of models in over 369 tasks that we normally do in our job in a desktop computer. And I think this is very relevant because for the first time, a machine can do more than an average expert. And to talk a little bit more about this, I would like to ask Andy and Santiago, what do you think is the relevance of this and the business impact for the finance industry, retail industry, and the media industries? I don't know, Andy, if you want to start giving your take on this.
Sure. I just want to reflect on something. So 75% against 72.4. That's incredible in itself, right? But I want to call out that 72.4% is the score of an expert human, not the average human, right?
Right.
So the gap is even bigger than what we're seeing on the screen. And when I think about how it all started, right? Like that 15% of previous models. This is the pace of innovation that we're dealing with today. And I remember many years ago, like this was, before anybody had heard the phrase generative AI. I remember this thought leader from the industry, and she said, listen, what you need to understand is that the AI that you're using right now, this is the dumbest AI that you will work with in your life. But the pace of innovation is exponential, right? So get on the train now. I wish I paid attention back then. But anyway, here we are. No, I mean it's amazing, right? It's amazing, and I've been reflecting about something that many authors have been claiming, that AI is a new electricity, right? So if AI is the new electricity, that means that intelligence is becoming a commodity, almost a
Sorry.
utility, right? So it's fascinating. And now the question begins, okay, having electricity, having light in your house, that's not gonna differentiate you. What's gonna differentiate you is what do you build under those lights, right? What do you build with AI? Because at the end of the day, AI is what you do with it. So when I think about the potential on, for those three specific industries, so finance, for instance, right? Finance and banking and financial services as a whole have always had very complex, robust, and somewhat obscure systems that were unable to talk to each other.
Right.
And we built API for those, right, for digital bridges. But at the end of the day, you always had to rely on a human analyst that was able to stitch the information from multiple systems, pull the data, stitch the data, and come to a conclusion. I was having a conversation with the CTO of a bank in Europe the other day. They plan to expand their operations across Europe, but they cannot rely solely on headcount because they can't hire fast enough. They cannot hire, train fast enough. So we're building intelligent workflows with multi-agentic system to take on some of that work, right? Again, it's all about what you do under the lights. So we're augmenting financial analysts to be able to pull data from different systems, stitch the data
Right.
together, and arrive to a
And
conclusion.
and that is a
Yeah,
very interesting point that you made, Andy, and that I thought about and researched about it. And is that one really interesting application of this, because this model, the 5.4 GPT, can actually, how they measure, what they measure in this benchmark is that this model can actually do things in regular applications such as a browser, an email editor, Slack, spreadsheets,
Yeah.
etc. Everything, that's what it measures.
yep,
Just going beyond theoretical things like I know an exam to apply to a university, to something that is real and real value. And what I found out a little bit in finance, and I want your take on this, is that one thing that happens in automation, and I think that in Wizeline we do that, is that we create a lot of integrations and APIs and different things to be able to connect different legacy systems from the banking industry, from finance, to actually make them work and automate things. But what's interesting is this model like saves us the time to do integrations to APIs and all of those things that we needed to be able to connect legacy systems or all of these systems. So we're actually saving all of that time of integration, and this automatically does that integration.
And something that I want to add here, and is that, as you mentioned already, from an engineering perspective, the change is massive, it's huge. So we are no longer talking about an AI that answers a chat. We are talking about an AI that operates the software for you. And in industries like media, where I've been working a lot lately, this allows small teams to handle huge amounts of data. But the real impact is not just saving money, as you said, Alvaro. Uh, it's about letting the human talent focus on creative strategy while the AI orchestrates and the search and organization of technical information. So it's not a
yeah.
finance example, but it's a good one.
Yeah, I think that integration is the definition of integration is changing, right? And until not too long ago, integration meant APIs, right? Now it's not just about APIs; it's also about MCPs, right? So in the world of AI, Anthropic has released this protocol, the Model Context Protocol, that allows us to follow client server architecture and build integration between these very powerful models and different applications, right? And it's great to see everybody jumping on board. But when it comes to computer use, yes, it means that the models are able to essentially take over your operating system, right? And start doing things. Now, I still believe that we will rely on ways of integration like MCP because it could get you to where you want to go faster as opposed to having a model logging into a system, going to a certain screen, downloading, a financial statement, and so on and so forth.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And now I want to go to a second part that it's really important, and it's about talking a blog post that Andy created. And one phrase that defines it is trying to escape the pilot or the proof of concept purgatory. And that is happening a lot. And Andy, well, I learned about that on Andy's blog post. And to give you a little bit of context, it was really interesting to read in that blog post what Gardner called the throw. The throw of disillusionment, or the path to disillusionment. And what was happening was that many of the companies where the interest in AI was waning down because they didn't see real business impact. And that was hurting a lot these initiatives. Now, Andy, I don't know if you can tell us a little bit more about your article and what was the problem and what are your main recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trough of disillusionment is I have a hard time pronouncing that one. It's interesting because essentially what we're saying is that we're on the other side of, or right at the middle of the hype cycle. So this is coming from Gartner's hype cycle, right? So essentially what companies are coming to the conclusion that they had unrealistic expectations, right? Um, I had many conversations with different stakeholders, and you get this feeling that they believe that AI is this, magic fairy dust that you just sprinkle on top of things and all of a sudden magic happens. And the reality is that AI is a combination of engineering, complex math, and hard work, right? It's not magic. Um, and people are starting to realize that. Uh, AI is not the answer to all our hopes and prayers. It's not the solution to every problem. That's one thing. But specifically when it comes to the pilot purgatory, as we call it, um, the reason behind it is there's just too many initiatives and programs right now in the corporate world that are led by IT or engineering. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to try out this new technology, this new tool, this new platform, this new model, and running around the office trying to find problems to solve with that. It reminds me of that phrase, when your only tool is a hammer, all your problems look like nails.
Right.
What companies need to do is really start with the problem. Okay, yeah, I get it. AI is cool and everybody's doing it, but we're trying to create business value for our company. So start with the problem. Start with the problem that you're trying to solve. Start with the opportunity that you're trying to capitalize on. And then you can make an informed decision whether AI is the right solution for that problem. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, right? But there's just too many POCs out there that are completely
Right.
disconnected from your business strategy, your business priorities. Um, Now, one study that I found very interesting from the Boston Consulting Group that came out last year. Um, and there's different studies. MIT published a very similar study and came to a very similar conclusion that only 5% of companies are actually winning with AI. And there's three things that companies that are winning have in common. So number one, they focus on the things that matter. They don't pursue, small incremental productivity gains, distractions. They really focus on their core business.
Yeah,
Second,
the business priorities that you mentioned.
exactly. Exactly. So, typical example is, let's say that I'm a media entertainment company and I want to build a POC that is automatically, capturing uh, meeting conversations, creating notes, and sending those to everybody that was invited to the meeting. So what? That's
Right.
not going to improve your bottom line as
Exactly.
as a media company, right? So the other
Yeah,
thing
like
that
you
they do
mentioned,
is,
like focusing on value, right? And value
yeah,
is reducing
your
cost
core business.
or something, or yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The message there is focus on your core business, right? What makes you you and not somebody else. Um so and we can talk about some concrete examples about that. So the second thing that they do is they go deep as opposed to going wide. They have fewer ongoing initiatives, but they see twice as much value in return. And the third thing is that they track and measure the financial success of their initiatives. What is the financial impact that these initiatives are creating in my business? Is it uplifting revenue? Is it creating additional revenue streams? Is it reducing costs? Is it doing both? Right.
Right.
However, 60% of companies don't track any financial KPI whatsoever. 60% of the companies that they survey track absolutely nothing when they come to the financial implications.
Yeah, like,
And
it's hard to see if you're successful if you don't have a clear vision of what success looks like and how to measure it.
yeah, you essentially at the end of the POC, you cannot answer a fundamental question, which is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
AI is expensive, by the way. It's getting cheaper. Okay, the cost of inference is coming down, but the cost of platforms and licensing and inference costs, training your talent, hiring your talent, retaining your talent, that's not cheap. So all that to not even measure what is
Right.
the return on your investment.
That's right. And one other important pillar that I read in your article was the data foundation. That's the core, having the right processes and data practices to actually be able to feed the information to really exploit the potential in AI.
Yeah. No, and that's I mean, and that is so very true, especially in the age of generative AI, because generative AI will answer whatever you ask, right? To a certain extent. Okay. It's gotten a lot better. Guardrails and guard posts have gotten a lot better. Um, but the point is that these are pre-trained models that already know a bunch of things. They come with a buttload of knowledge within them. But you need to ground them with your data. There is no AI without data. And if you do not augment these models with your data, with your brand, with your voice, with your products, with your customers, with what makes you you, you will sound exactly like any other company out there. Maybe not even in your sector or your geography, right? So the key message for me, and I repeat over and over, is I understand everybody wants to get to AI, but there is no AI without
Without
data.
data. Completely agree. And yeah, I think that to summarize, what one of the most important points in your article and the message is maybe for engineering teams and IT teams, as you mentioned, to stop thinking of proof of concepts and think more of minimum viable products. So they're
Right.
always aligned with business and not just, without any business focus.
And the main difference is that a POC will prove technical feasibility, and MVP will prove business value.
Right. Completely agree. And what do you think, Andy, is the change that companies need to do? Because obviously, this also seems like a like a how do you say it? Like a mentality or a problem-solving thing that engineers need, right? Like, do you think that how can these companies that are not doing what they're supposed to do implement this change so engineers are more business focused? Let's say like that. Is it
I don't think that it's just a matter of us engineers, right?
right?
I think that it is a culture change within organizations. It is about developing and promoting AI literacy within organizations, but not just for not just for engineering teams, but across the entire company. You know, if there's a famous phrase, right? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I think it was Kennedy. Um, there's a similar phrase when it comes to AI. Ask not what AI can do for you, but what your company can become with AI. So really understand that AI is a transformational technology that really goes beyond engineering teams. So it's really important for companies to have a clear understanding of what AI means for them, what the company can become thanks to AI, and making sure there's alignment between the business and IT and working together. AI is a means to an end, never the end goal. It might be for us engineers, right? But like I said, we're trying to create business value for our companies. So there needs to be an alignment, and AI needs to be an enabler, of your business strategy. But AI is not your strategy
Agree.
unless you're
Yeah,
unless
and
you're a product company.
if you
Yeah, go
allow
ahead.
me to ask something to on this point here about talent, something I'm really proud of at Wizeline is our effort in AI adoption. It's amazing that we don't just build AI solutions for clients; we live it. We have ongoing trainings with different platforms like Datacom licenses for the whole organization. And I especially love our data and AI tech talks where we bring AI solutions down to the air for the whole organization, not only the dev side. And this is important to solve real problems for our Wizeliners in the in the day to day. And it's all about apply continuous learning. This is the important message here.
I
Never
think
stop learning.
that's really important. And I don't know, Andy, if this is also one of the reasons why Wizeline is investing heavily in upskilling in AI.
100%. You know, we say that we are an AI native company, and I truly believe that. But what does that mean? Because some folks might say, "Oh, wait, does that mean that you were born in the age of AI?" No, you know, we've been around for a while. Okay, we're still young. Not me personally, but for us, being AI native means that our employees are AI native, right? It means that AI is not something that they use every now and then. It means that AI is part of their default settings, right? And to Santi's point, that is the culture that we're trying to establish within the organization, right? Every time that you're faced with a task, ask yourself, "Wait, is this something that I can leverage the AI tools that I have?" And it's not just DataCamp. We've enabled the entire organization to access with access to different AI tools. Specifically, we leverage Gemini for workspace, right? In addition to some other tools that we have within the ecosystem. So it's not just about giving training; it's also about giving tools. What we learn is that giving tools is not enough. You know, we have a mental model. First comes training, then comes adoption, and then comes impact. So we want to make sure that we give our Wizeliners the tools so they can invest in their careers.
I agree. And I also think that to be able to exploit the potential of this training and all of our knowledge in AI is also real important to have some skills and mentalities that allows us to actually be able to surpass any kind of inconvenient or barrier that we have. And that's why
I
I
don't
think
know if I may to that point because I think that it's super important. Um, AI. I mean, we're engineers, right? We're engineers. We understand technology. We know how to code and all that jazz. Most people on the planet does not. Okay, so imagine if it's a little bit, you know, depending on the week, it can be a little bit challenging for us to keep up to date and understand what's going on. Imagine what happens to the general population of the world.
right.
Okay. So all this is like super intimidating. It's complicated. It's moving really fast. It's difficult and hard to separate the signal from the noise. I think that the best way for all of us to go through these times is really embrace having a growth mindset.
A growth
Understanding
mindset.
that yes,
Definitely.
you do not have all the answers. You do not have all the answers. Nobody does. Um, but trust in the skills that you have and your ability to learn and be willing to invest the time, and it will pay off.
Definitely, I agree. The growth mindset is what we need, and abundance, in having the ownership to go beyond and try different things, and yeah, as you say, growth mindset, always trying to learn to try out things. I think that's really important. And I want to go to another segment that I really like, and I think it's really important and is related to an event that Andy is involved with and is related to the media and entertainment industries. And what is interesting about this is that Andy is going to talk about how the entertainment and the media industries are adopting and adopting agentic AI and orchestration to really supercharge operational efficiency. And before continuing, I just want to give a little bit of context about this industry and how does it work and what's the future, so we understand a little bit better how we can adapt. And in my research, some of the interesting things about the entertainment and media industries is that currently it is around a 4 trillion industry and is expected by 2035 to become a 7 trillion industry, growing at a 4.7 compound aggregate growth rate, which is huge. And we're also seeing that in certain regions, there's going to be a lot of expansion, such as in Asia Pacific, especially in India and Indonesia, which is going to have a 7.5% growth rate. And it's not only this, it's going beyond that, and it's how the whole business model is changing. And it's changing from a few big players and some traditional ways on how to distribute the information to other things such as the creator industry. For example, it is expected by 2027 that the industry is going to grow to $500 billion, and that by 2035 it's going to become a multi-trillion dollar industry. And the whole habits that people are having in consumption is driving a lot. For example, for the younger generations, they're mostly accessing news through social media. And for example, for the group age under 40, the most preferred way to access videos or content is by short formats. Over 95% of the content that they consume is that type. And I think that is very interesting. So giving this, Andy, this context, what do you think, how are companies in the media and entertainment industries implementing agentic AI and orchestration to thrive up their operational efficiencies, and what success cases have you seen?
You know, media and entertainment is an industry that is very close and dear to my heart. I've worked with many industries in in over 20 years of my career, but the time that I cherished the most was the time that I worked with companies like companies and brands like Hulu, the Walt Disney Company, HBO, NFL, and I guess that the main reason for that is media entertainment is not just an industry that I worked for, but that I'm also a consumer, right? I love going to the movies. I love watching cartoons with my kids on a Saturday morning. Uh, Car insurance, on the other hand, it's something that you need to have, not something that you necessarily choose. So I think that there's some great examples when it comes to media and entertainment, and over the past year or so, there's this concept, and Alvaro, you kind of touched upon it, right? So different demographics have a different behavior, right? So some people still like to, go online, to a website and read the news. Some would rather consume the news through a podcast. Um, some through short, social media post on Instagram, right? There's this idea of liquid content. That content should be liquid, should be fluid. You should be able to meet your audience where they are and provide them with the content in whatever format they prefer on whatever platform they choose. Now, in order to do that, companies need to really invest in reimagining and redefining their media supply chain, right? Um, and it's not just about the distribution, it's also about the reformatting of the content. So we've done some very cool projects with different news outlets. For instance, um, grabbing an article that is already out there, it's already been published, and using AI to generate a short form video that is ready to be published to different platforms. And we can adjust the tone of voice depending on the platform that the video is going to be posted to. Another example that is coming up. So I'm from Argentina. So we're all, and you guys are from Colombia. So we're all big on soccer, football, as we call it, right? We have the World Cup coming up. So FIFA announced a partnership with Lenovo. They're going to be releasing football. It's either Football AI or AI Football Pro. I think it's Football AI Pro. And there's some very interesting use cases of using multi-agent system because there's different steps involved in media supply chain. And that's why the technology, the multi-agentic approach, suits very well for the use case because you have different workflows being executed at the same time, but it all kind of converges, right? Not to mention that generative AI is very well suited for multimodalities of information, images, video, sound, and so on, right? So FIFA is launching this technology, and it's going to be able to cover different use cases. It's going to be able to create 3D avatars of players that is going to help them to identify and track them throughout the pitch. That in turn is going to be fed into their offside technology to make better and faster calls, if you will. Um, I don't know if you've seen in some games in Europe, they have the referee view or the referee camera. But the
Yeah,
thing is that the referee is running, right? So the referee is running, and sometimes you start feeling a little bit dizzy. You start getting a little motion sickness because the guy's running and he's running fast. So they're also using AI to stabilize the picture, right? To improve the viewer experience back home. They're also going to be using video intelligence to extract information and create analytics for both the teams and the viewers, right? And when you think about it, this World Cup is going to be how many teams? 44, 48 teams. So it's
yeah,
going to be the World Cup with the most number of teams and the most number of games in history. So, and they're able to do all that at scale by leveraging artificial intelligence.
definitely. And I also was researching about this topic, and it was very interesting. For example, how they were using these agentic workflows. And for example, for sports retransmission processing times, they were able to slash it from 45 minutes to 6 minutes.
Yep.
Or another thing that was really interesting was that something that media projects and in the entertainment industry that they really struggled with was with the predictability of the delivery of the project. But with all of these tools, they were able to pass like from 67% of predictability or success on the target to over 94% of hitting the deadlines that they set up and the delivery goals. So I think it's very interesting how this is helping to also drive that operational excellence.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I want your take on, Andy, is I read that they're predicting that because of different tools that use large language models such as Gemini or ChatGPT, the business model of media companies is going to change because now they expect that it's maybe going to drop by 40% soon, the traffic that comes from from search engines because of this. So the business model of clicking on an article and that getting to an ad or something, that's going to change. So how do you envision that, and what do you recommend for companies given this change that these tools are bringing on the business model?
It's something that it's definitely top of mind, for news organizations, for publishers. I don't I don't believe that we have an answer yet. However, a definitive answer at least. Because yes, you're right. Traffic has gone down, but that's also, and it goes back to this concept of liquid content, right? So these companies, these media companies, news organizations, and publishers, they are investing in tools and workflows that will allow them to reach their audience in different ways, using different formats, using different platforms, right? So that's definitely helping them. But there's another very interesting. I do believe that at some point there has to be some understanding agreement between the AI labs and these news organizations. Because let's say that you're using, an AI search engine. Um, yes, there's guardrails and guardposts to try to prevent the answer from hallucinating. And the best way to do that is grounding these models and information. And you have these organizations, the Washington Post, for instance, like they don't publish random stuff, right? So that if the Post published something, it has been checked, double checked, and triple checked, right? So some folks are saying that news organizations are an invaluable source of curated, vetted data for these models. Now, the commercial agreements are not necessarily in place just yet. And you can say that for other industries as well, right? So just to wrap up, I don't think that there's a definitive answer to the problem that you're presenting, but I do know first-handedly, because we're working on it, that media organizations are working to find solutions for these challenges. It's not something that hasn't happened before. I, I'm old enough to have used Napster, right, back in the day, and it definitely changed consumer behavior. But guess what? There's still bands.
Right.
There's still record labels, right? So
Exactly.
we were able to find a way as a
Yeah,
society
exactly.
to make it
But
work.
it's like also having like the mindset the companies need to have on the business leaders to know that they have to adapt their business case. As you say, maybe, I don't know, create the next Spotify, create the next iTunes, something like that. But because if they stay in the current business model, definitely they can have a
Yeah,
blockbuster Netflix moment.
and they're also changing the experience, Alberto, because when you think about it, like I read news all the time. Um, but when you think about the experience, it's very one directional, right? So you go to a certain website and you consume whatever news the website has written, and there's some personalization. Maybe depending on your likes, you'll see some news here and other news that you're not necessarily drawn to on the bottom of the website. But it's very one directional. The Washington Post, for instance, has invested in a new experience called Ask the Post. Ask the Post. So essentially, you go in and you have this news assistant, right, that has learned about your preferences and
Right? Like
like gives you a wrap up,
hyper personalization.
hyper personalized, and it gives you like the 5 top news that the assistant believes that you will be interested in. But you can now interact with the news. You can start asking questions. You can say, but wait, isn't this related to something that happened 2 weeks ago? You can start asking questions. So all of a sudden, you're having a conversation with the news, right? Not just consuming the news. I think that that's really interesting.
Very interesting. I definitely see that. And yeah, one advice that I heard, and I think it's interesting, and I want your take on that, and is that in this report they recommended that media companies and entertainment companies should do many things, but one of the things should be trying to make partnerships with technology companies to be able to adapt and have the capabilities. And the other one that I thought was interesting was trying to uh, do more alliances with independent creators to also align their business model to the to a creator economy that is gonna continue to grow at a very fast pace. I don't know, what do you think about this for big companies?
It's interesting. I remember the first time that I came across the concept or the notion of content creators. I do believe that AI is giving a lot of independent and smaller companies to be able to do more, not just more, a
Yeah, to
lot more,
compete,
a
right?
lot more, right? A lot more with the resources that they have. Um, and like we said towards the beginning of the conversation, the pace of innovation is accelerating. So they're able to do a lot more now. Think about what they're going to be able to do in 2 or 3 months from now. Now, one thing that I also said is that AI, I mean, it's not cheap, but it's also not crazy expensive either. So the entry barrier is somewhat low. It's somewhat low. and I love what's happening. Some of the content that I'm consuming, like you said, is being created by independent creators, smaller companies, and and yes, definitely, they're able and will be able to do a lot more with a lot less, and a lot faster than they had in the past.
Very
And one point here, I think that businesses need to stop seeing AI as an IT expense and start seeing it as the real production engine that you mentioned. So we already see many cases, like for example, the retransmission dropping from 45 to 6 minutes. So the future is definitely transitioning to become ecosystem orchestrator, especially in fast growing markets like the Asia Pacific and India that in the map that you show us,
definitely.
Alvaro.
And there is something very interesting that you shared, Santiago, and is the agentic coding revolution and the coding trends that we're seeing. And you were talking about in that report that you shared how we're shifting from implementer to, for example, for engineers, from implementers of code, writing code, to orchestrators and managing swarms of agents. And I think this is very interesting. I want to give some facts so we can ground up a little bit better these details.
Sure. Yeah. The AI, as you should know, if you're developing code, writes the base codes incredibly fast. But we need the human engineer more than ever to define the architecture, ensure security, and align the technology with the client's business model. And second, this is something I always tell to some students in Latin America: never forget the basics. AI is a powerful tool, but solid logic, problem solving skills, and the human empathy are what truly make you a senior engineer. So that's really important to have in mind.
Definitely. And just to give you some quick facts, I thought it was very interesting in the report that you shared, Santiago, that, for example, this company called Telus saved over 500,000 hours of developing time using agents by developing new applications. And also, they were able to deliver code 30% faster. And another thing that was really interesting was how Rakuten was able to process and analyze one of its code bases that had 12.5 million lines of code in 7 hours and with really high accuracy. Or, for example, what Zapier is doing of having over 800 deployed agents and are now over 80%, 89% adoption rate within the company. And they're actually using live prototyping with clients using these generative AI tools. So I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit more about some of the highlights of that report that you found.
Sure. In a nutshell, the main takeaway is that the models are finally ready for safe and enterprise level orchestration. So in different projects we build uh, using AWS, GCP, Azure, Bedrock, Agent Core. So in our case, in my current project, we chose Anthropic models exactly because of the reasoning capabilities and focus on safety. And here we learn that the AI is no longer just a chat experiment. It's a reliable agentic workflow, as you can see here in the metrics. An agentic workflow that connects via MCP, via APIs directly to the company's real data, like emails, like logs, like different data sources to give precise results without hallucinating.
Very interesting. Santiago, I want to ask you one question, and is what do you think are the main tips that you have for engineers and Wizeliners on how to use these insights of passing from just an implementer to an orchestrator, and what can they do to take advantage of this insight?
Sure. Yeah, first, we have to embrace the evolution of our role. We are mentioning we are shifting this from just code implementers to becoming something like more in a designer, more responsible way to becoming orchestrators of AI agents in general. So here it's important to keep in mind the powerful uh, how powerful can be AI and LLMs nowadays, and even uh, now with these myths or mythos, LLM that Anthropic just presented this week. But as I mentioned, the strong logic, the problem solving skills, and human empathy is the important thing that we have to keep as a developer. And this is what truly makes you a good engineer and AI engineer or whatever you are trying to solve with AI.
Very interesting. And how's your, I don't know, how have you incorporated this in your daily job? How has, I don't know, in the recent time, how
Oh,
have your job changed and what had you done to really increase your productivity using this?
this this is a good question. In many ways, I think my daily workflow has changed completely the last 2 or 3 years. Right now, I use Cloud Code inside Cursor as my command center. So I don't just use it to generate code. I use it to do code review for my teammates, pull requests, which ensures constant quality. I also use it to monitor the logs of the services we have deployed in AWS for the UTA project, for example. And also I use it to automate technical uh, documentation. So on top of that, it's connected via MCP to Jira as well to keep track with my user stories and the Scrum methodologies, ceremonies, and all of that. And all of this is inside of my command center with Cursor and Cloud Code. So from my IDE, I can generate new sprint tickets with a clear acceptance criteria and connected to the real code and the project we are working in collaboration, and also connected to the GitHub repository. So this is great, and basically the AI does the heavy lifting, and I focus on the fine details and the design. That's it. That's a summary of how can I use in my daily job.
Perfect. And Andy, what's your take? What do you think should whiteliners or and engineers do with this orchestration, and what should they be using? What do you expect?
I think that we've been using AI to build software for a while now. Um, it all started with GitHub Copilot. At first we were using the assistants like ChatGPT on the side, and then ChatGPT Enterprise, and then you know AI powered IDEs like GitHub Copilot, and then came along Cursor. I do believe that Cloud Code was a step change in the way that we use AI to build software. It's just amazing. Um, and then they added, agent scales. So I think that the way that software engineers are using AI to build software is also changing. And we're really optimistic about it, super optimistic about it. So at Wizeline, we are really pushing for this shift in the way that we deliver software for our clients, which is through agentic pods. So we like to talk about the a story of evolution um, from waterfall to the early days of agile to agile pods, and now to agentic pods, where software engineers like Santi are collaborating with AI agents that do specific tasks, and I think that that's very important. It's the better that you can describe a specific mission, a goal, a purpose to an agent, the better output that you're going to get, right? So, for instance, we're building agents to augment our teams that tackle specific tasks like security audits, PR reviews, incident resolution management, Unit testing, I already mentioned, I believe. Well, and if not, there you go. But we're building agents to focus on specific tasks of the software development lifecycle and work alongside our software engineers under this construct of agentic AI.
Very interesting,
Not
definitely.
agentic
And
AI, sorry,
any
agentic
tool,
pod. Sorry.
that you think it's very interesting and that you recommend people or engineers looking at, especially in Wizeline?
Tools?
Yeah, I don't know. Like Santi recommended Cloud Code and Cursor. Any particular that
I,
you
I,
think that
I,
it's at
I
least
w- I
worth
would say,
investing time looking at it?
yeah, I just want to say that it's not only about the tool because tools are changing every day. It's maybe more about the concept, for example, the protocol, MCP. How can
Yeah.
you connect these to different tools to create a different ecosystem? But as I mentioned, I'm using Cursor, Cloud, and Cloud connected with the license from my project from UTA, which is great. And also, we are trying to use some uh, tools available in our Google Workspace from Wizeline, and that's enough for now. But later, in 1 month or 2 months, it can be completely different. But the concept of the tool it will be the same.
Yeah. And I echo what Santi said. So personally, I also use Claude Code within the terminal inside Cursor, but I have friends that only use the terminal and they actually make fun of me because I use Claude Code within Cursor, right? Um, but it's not about the tools, it's about the skills. And the way that we're building agents for software development um, is using some of the open standards, open protocols and standards that Santi was mentioning, MCP, to be able to connect these agents to different tools involved in the SDFC process. Think Jira, Confluence, GitHub, right? So the agent needs access to all these systems, but also agent skills. We're really into agent skills because it is an amazing way of really augmenting or extending the knowledge that these models have on the specifics of your project and of your processes, because you can define the workflow, the expected sequence of steps within the agent skills. And it is incredibly easy to customize that to different clients and to different projects. Um, so that's a little bit about how we're building the agents, not just the tools, but the protocols and standards behind them.
Very interesting. And I know that we have run out of time. And just one last question to close it up, Andy. And is, what do you think about the importance of physical AI in for example, in Wizeline strategy? Do you think that's something you're interested in pursuing or not?
I have an interest in physical AI for personal reasons. I'm going to date myself. So when I was a kid, I loved the Jetsons, and I always, imagined having a Rosie inside my house, taking care of the chores. Um, and now we're getting there. If
Right?
you guys saw the robot, what's the name of is it X1? What is
Yeah. Well,
what is the name of the
Optimus from
robot?
Tesla. I don't remember the other one.
Yeah, no, not the Tesla one.
Okay.
I'm not a huge 1X.
One X. Okay. From what
1X,
company?
1X. Yeah, 1X from you. So I have a personal interest. However, we as a company, we're we work in the digital space, right? So we're not going to produce the metal. Physical AI is it's so taking a step back. Agents. Agents is the current phase of evolution of generative AI. Until not too long ago, we had assistants. We had a very powerful brain inside a box that knew a lot of things, and you could ask questions that it would give you answer. Now with agents, this brain all of a sudden has arms, right? So it can interact with other digital systems, but it's still contained in the digital world. Physical AI and spatial AI is what we need to give legs to these AI systems, and at that point, we're talking robots. As a software company, we're not going to produce the metal, right? But we are going to be working
Give
on
it a training and
integrating these models with the rest of the ecosystem, right? I remember when I was working with a very well-known media entertainment company that has theme parks all over the world. And they were exploring robotics, and what they said was, yeah, I mean, we know how to build robots, but where we need you guys is to help us manage a fleet of robots, because that's software.
Right. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
but very, very interesting. There's a lot out there regarding world models. There's some
Word model.
very well-known thought leaders in the space, like Jan LeCun. So
Right. With JPA.
Jan actually, he left Meta to pursue his vision around world model. Fascinating.
Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a very big opportunity, and companies like Tesla and some others are really betting big, because definitely it can be a really game changer, this new opportunity. And well, we're out of time. I want to thank Andy for his time, and also Santiago. And if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. And thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for having us, Salvador. Sanjay, good to see you as
Thank you
always.
so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.